How does one introduce a personality who has achieved so much in her lifetime without the service going over an hour? Dr. the Honorable Jean Augustine can tell you the more personal information. I mean, while we'll briefly touch on her political life, because that is why she's with us today and why she is particularly busy every February. She is the one who made Black History Month happen in Canada. In 1993, she was elected for the Liberals in the riding of Etobicoke Lakeshore. She made history as the first Black woman elected to the Canadian House of Parliament. She successfully held her seat in consecutive elections until she stepped down in 2004. She will tell you about some of her history as the first Black female MP. When I look at some, because the list is extensive, of her accomplishments and her leadership in women's issues, education, community service, and social justice, it's obvious that she works hard, quietly, and consistently to ensure progress. She's always been an educator. She has scholarships at 2 colleges. There is also the Jean Augustine Chair in Education at York University. She is a member of the Order of the British Empire and the Order of Canada. At a time when namings cause concern, conversation, and consternation, I think that Dr. Augustine is okay. Some places named after her are the Jean Augustine Secondary School in the Peel District School Board in Brampton. This school is the most technologically advanced school in the whole board. There's the Jean Augustine Girls Leadership Academy in the Toronto District School Board, the Jean Augustine Centre for Young Women's Empowerment, the Jean Augustine Park on Toronto's Lakeshore Boulevard, and the City of Vaughan has named the Jean Augustine Complex and the Jean Augustine District Park. I'll stop. Please welcome with me to Church of the Incarnation, Dr. the Honorable Jean Augustine.
Thank you, Randy. And my living will not be in vain. I learned that in Happy Hill, St. George's, Grenada, growing up in a small rural, well, not so rural, because in Grenada we talk about in the town and outside the town. I'm very pleased to join you, Church of the Incarnation, this morning. I was happy with the welcome by Pastor Michael Patterson, and I'm very pleased to see Mr. Terrell joining us here, as well as the music and the readings that have been so inspirational and so hopeful and so healing at this very special time, these challenging times that we're in. It was 25 years ago that I stood in the House of Commons and called on my colleagues to designate February as Black History Month in Canada. And Randy knows the story, and Randy has asked me to tell the story, but it's a long one. But I'll go for the motion that I presented at the time. Because as he told you, Black History Month, it started in the United States and 1926 with Carter G. Woodson. At the same time, the men who were working on the railway cars were bringing back to Toronto pamphlets and posters and other things from the US. And we quickly picked this up in Toronto. At the same time, the Negro Women's Club started to do celebrations later on. The city of Toronto, on the urging of the Ontario Black History Society, did proclaim February as Black History Month. I felt it was important as an educator that Black History Month be designated all across our country, hence the motion. As I worked with colleagues for unanimous consent, I had to give just the facts. And the facts of the motion, because I wanted unanimous consent, I had to go for the facts of the motion. And the facts were that this House take note of the important contribution of Black Canadians to the settlement, the growth, and the development of Canada. the diversity of the Black community in Canada, the importance of that history to Canada, and I call on the House to recognize February as Black History Month in Canada. And I'm stressing in Canada because we want to, in this month, focus on the Canadians who've been making contributions, focus on the struggles that we had in that African Canadians were experiencing in Canadian society. We know that we were here since 1603, the coming of Matthew de Costa with the Champlain expedition, the involvement of the Mi'kmaq people. He acted as a translator with the Mi'kmaq to make sure that the expedition could land securely and safely, and that the Mi'kmaq people welcomed the expedition as a result of the fact that this Black man was able to translate. Historians tell us that if he knew the Mi'kmaq language in 1603, 1604, that he must have come to the Canadian shores before then, because I don't know there were many Mi'kmaqs running around the ports in Portugal where he could have picked up their language. So we know we were part of the development. We were part of the settlement. We were part of the growth of the nation. We also know that sad history of slavery in Canada, that there are places where we were buying and selling individuals, that there were enslaved people in our communities, many of them owned by legislators and important people. But this is a part of history. And those are parts that were not taught in our history books. As an educator teaching social studies, there were no modules that spoke about the early African Canadian settlements, the involvement of African Canadians. There was nothing also about the indigenous peoples. Whenever there was any references in history, it was always footnotes or sidelines, not integrated into the story. And so the purpose and the push to get this motion was really to say, we have to learn about each other. We cannot be talking about the fact that in 71 and onwards, we declared ourselves a multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. And at the same time, we don't know our history and we don't know each other's history. To respect each other, we have to know that history. To look at what we need to do in the society to make sure that all of us are contributing members of our community, no matter where we are in the society. What has happened in 2020 with the pandemic, with the Black Lives Matter, with conversations around systemic discrimination? We've seen the gaps in our society between the haves and the have-nots. We've seen the faces of the essential workers. We've seen the faces of those who provide care in various and varying facilities. And we recognize that we have some healing to do in Canadian society. We have some reparation and work to do in Canadian society to make sure that we do what is important to ensure our recognition of diversity, and that inclusion has to be the way forward. I keep talking about the Sankofa bird and using that as an imagery for me. The Sankofa is a bird with its neck always going backwards. And I've been using that analogy to say that we have to know the history, and then knowing and being aware of that history, we bring it to the present, to the front, as the bird does. We examine and we look at what are we doing in the society? Who are our leaders? What are the boardrooms like? Who makes decisions about promotional opportunities? about health issues. Who makes decisions and who are the voices and where are the voices? And in Canada, we've done a lot of research, a lot of data, a lot of reports, a lot of surveys. And we know the people who are left behind. We know the groups that are left behind. We know the issues that we have to deal with. And so in this reflective time, in this time, I think it was given to us to be a healing time, a time when we can face ourselves and we can face our neighbors. And we can begin to say what has been raised by the killing of George Floyd in such a very public way, when we can see and not just, speculate. Now with technology and everyone having a camera, we were able to see brutality. We were able to see injustices right before our eyes. And as people of God and people who want to make a difference in communities, we have to recognize that we have to do something about this. We have to heal. We have to grow. We have to recognize that we are our neighbor's keeper. And so as we come to this Black History Month, 25 years, when we first started, when was it, 1966, the very first Black History Month celebration, very small. Now 25 years later, Black History Month is celebrated everywhere in our country, in every geographical area. Black History Month is celebrated in corporate Canada, in businesses, in churches, in educational circles, everywhere. The media, entertainment, everywhere. We are recognizing that we need to get that history of African Canadians. Black History Month is not just for Black people. Black History Month is for all of us to recognize, to know that this is Canadian history that we all must know in order for us to work together. Black History Month in Canada. I know that we know the Americans and the American stories and the African Americans who were very prominent in civil rights and in other areas. Their history is being told right now in the United States as they celebrate Black History Month. We want our young people to know Black Canadians, to know African Canadians, to know their story, to know about Ottawa and what happens there, to know that we do have the Oscar Petersons, to know that we do have the Lincoln Alexander, to know that we do have the entertainers, that we do have people like the Viola Desmond that we've struck the $10 bill for. Her story came before Rosa Parks. And yet there are lots of people who can tell you about Rosa Parks and refusing to give up her seat in the bus. We have the story here. And so we want Black Canadians, we want all Canadians, we want all classrooms to focus on the contribution and the knowledge of African Canadians. As we move forward, we see that the reflective time given to us have also been an opportunity and a call for us to go forward after this pandemic, to recognize that we are and to underscore the fact that as a diverse society, we're also an inclusive society. And so Pastor, Randy, Marlene, all of you who are doing this work, doing this important work in community, need to be as inclusive as you possibly can to give the messages that we're all in this together and that we go forward recognizing the talent in our midst, the folks in our midst, the essential workers in our midst, and that we commit ourselves to ensuring that you do this not only in February, but Black History Month, as we say, has to carry on 365 days of our lives. And so thank you for the occasion and the opportunity. I can talk about my time in Parliament and the struggles, and but I think that's another story for another time. So it's a hope that you'll invite me back at some point in time when we can share stories and we can talk about adversity, and we can talk about equity but I think it's important that Black History Month in Canada, that we use this opportunity to educate ourselves around this issue. Merci beaucoup. Megwich.
Dr. Augustine, we have you on tape, asking if we will have you back. We will definitely have you back. On behalf of the entire community here at Incarnation, thank you. We are honored and privileged to have you this morning. Your words were profound. Your challenge was very profound as well. And we are seeking to be that inclusive community that you call us to be. And we thank you for being here. We know you're in high demand. And I know you have something else in just a few minutes as well. So I know you'll be moving on from our time together, but I'm not going to say goodbye. I'm going to just say adieu until we meet again. And we will have you back very soon. So again, thank you on behalf of everybody here at Incarnation. It's been a privilege.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.